Welcome back to a new episode of Business Beyond the Game. I'm your host, Eric Jackson. I'm excited to be joined by entrepreneur, businessman, philanthropist, aspiring golfer, and future Pro Football Hall of Famer, Larry Fitzgerald Jr. Larry, what's going on, man?
What's up, E? Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to join you on this amazing platform, this unbelievable studio, too.
Oh, man, thank you. I appreciate it, man. I noticed with you have the Fitzgerald Jr., the suffix. You use it pretty often. I'm curious, have you always, a nod to your dad, have you always just used that often?
Yeah, I mean, my dad used to always tell me when I was a kid, I'd get in trouble. He's like, don't you ever forget, you got my name. You got my name. Don't mess it up. And so I always, when I mess around with him now, I always tell him, hey, I built the name now. Don't mess it up now. So he always get the joke out of it. So he always makes me go by Junior, and he says he's the original. Yeah,
I love it. I'm the second, so I always like to hear Junior's their point of view on it. Larry, I got a question for you. What do you, Art Shell, Eli Manning, and Antonio Gates all have in common?
Ooh, I have no clue. I have no clue.
Well, you all played for the same franchise throughout your NFL career. Obviously, you secured a spot in the Pro Bowl 11 times with the Arizona Cardinals. Did you ever consider leaving, and do you carry that same loyalty and commitment into your life now as a businessman?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed my time in Arizona, and I'm not just one that's going to jump ship, just because things get difficult or times are tough. And I was always thinking about like the 40-year plan too.
Yeah.
Jumping around from city to city, you're not able to have the deep roots and relationships that you want. I look at Arizona now, and there's not anything that I don't have access to, from philanthropic endeavors to business associates to like even, political affiliation. So like that stuff doesn't happen if you move around a lot. It requires you to be like deep and intentional. And that was something I always was really focused on, even from a really young age.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you've mentioned your ties now, and I mentioned you're an angel investor, and you've invested in over 150 companies now, from technology to hospitality. What would you say your investment approach is and your focus areas, right? Because I'm sure you get pitch deck after pitch deck. How do you kind of make your decisions there?
In terms of personally, I just like to find interesting things that I know I can add value to. And, I really try to focus that, so sometimes it's, with like signals, for instance, it's a glucose monitoring app. My grandfather, both grandfathers had complications from diabetes, eventually took their lives, unfortunately. Had an uncle recently passed away. My dad's diabetic. So I know it affects, people of color at a disproportionate rate. And so like if we can, help people like us to be able to monitor our health a little bit more efficiently and, limit us from being in the system, for things that are, for the most part, easily combated. Those are things that I enjoy being a part of. So like that's just one example of something that I feel like I can add value, and it's affected me in a way that, I'm not happy about.
Right, not just looking for profits, right, but impact outside of that.
I'm not saying everything is an impact investment, but I do take it into consideration for me personally.
Yeah. No, it's great. And, Larry, when I talk to former athletes, a lot of them try to make that sort of leap to like, hey, I'm leaving sports. I'm going to just do real estate or, I'm maybe construction, get out of it completely, right? And I feel like you've taken a little bit of a different approach. You have several sports investments, cricket team, Rajasthan Royals, pickleball with the Major League, pickleball with AZ Drive, and formerly with the Phoenix Suns. Curious, do you feel like your sports investors an opportunity to stay around the game, if you will, maybe a more emotional, passive investment?
No, not at all. I make investments that like I feel like are solid, and they're gonna do well in the future. If we take in like pickleball for consideration, when an opportunity came, I was somebody who played the game pretty frequently. And I was introduced to it probably 7-8 years ago, randomly down in Mexico. I was playing golf, and I heard this paddle sound, and I was, kind of taking a little break, and I went over and saw. I was like, what is this? Somebody asked me to come out. I played like a game. I didn't really have the time, but I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Then I saw the sense of community that you build with it. I mean, people all having a good time, people sitting around watching, commenting on the game. So it brought people together. And then you go like by any local park. You go to Central Park here in New York City, and you see the courts that are set up, and you see, 7-year-olds playing with 57-year-olds, right? And you see, Hispanic kids playing with Jewish kids. Like, just doesn't matter. It's like, are you good enough to be on the court with me? Can you help us win this game? And so games that connect, keep kids healthy, keep people engaged. Those things are really important to us. In such a polarizing, divisive world that we live in now, we need to find more things that connect us.
What would you say is your better suit, pickleball or golf? Because I know you're on the links too. So
yeah, I like both of them. I like pickleball because when you're done playing pickleball, like you're sweating, your heart. I look at my heart rate monitor. I've worked out. I've got something done. And golf is no better sport or thing to do to be able to connect with people. There's no other sport where you can spend 4 hours of intentional time with an individual or two other individuals and really get to know them intimately. Like I feel like golf is the best 4-hour interview you can ever have. I know everything I need to know about you after I play golf with you. Are you yelling at the caddy because a shot that you hit that he had nothing to do with or she had nothing to do with? Are you keeping yourself are you holding yourself accountable? Or that ball, if it's behind that tree, are you bumping it out into the into a better, more advantageous position? Like all of those things reveal who you are. So the game really reveals character.
Mine just usually goes into the water. So
does mine. You're no different from anybody else. And I see a lot of pros hit in the water too. I mean, it's just part of the game. It's tough. It's a tough game.
Larry, you partnered with Morgan Stanley to create the Money in the Making digital platform, with financial education, helping young athletes manage their wealth. And curious, has it always been important for you to help the next generation, avoid making mistakes and, have success stories in finance?
Yeah, I hate to use the word mistakes. I mean, when you're talking about young men and women who are coming into an exorbitant amount of money, a lot of them come from, tough backgrounds where finances are normally not talked about. They don't have anybody that they can turn to be educated on it. And so, when I talked to Sandra Richardson, she told me about what they were creating at Morgan Stanley. I thought it was a no-brainer. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by some incredibly intelligent people who have helped me along the way. And so for me not to be receptive to the idea of helping younger players, be more financially educated early on in their careers, I got mine, from 25 to 40 now, right? Think about it now. These young men and women are, you look at the young lady, Livy Dunn down at LSU making $5 million a year, in college. You look at Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter and, Jalen Milroe and these young guys making $2-3 million. This is real money, at 19, 20 years old. You think about compound interest. If you're able to start saving that type of capital at that age, you look up at 62, the retirement age where you can take Social Security. Think about how much that money will be compounded if you're able to be diligent about it. And so I think like we as athletes and former athletes have to be able to understand like we have to take it. We have to take the bull by the horns and help them, because like they'll do the same thing for the following generation.
Can you just think about what your college experience would have been like at Pitt if name, image, and likeness was, I know it's hypothetical, but if it was around at that time? Have you ever wrapped your mind around with that?
I worry. Honestly, I don't know if I would have been able to handle it. I would say I was mature, but I was easily influenced by cars and things of that nature. And I don't know, it might have burned a hole in my pocket. Who's to say? But what I did enjoy about that time is I was able to pick a school that was the right fit for me. And I thought about it. I said, if I got hurt the first day I got here, is this a place that I could thrive, as a student, without the athletics? And yes, I really felt that was the case. And you're looking at these young men and women now are making decisions just based solely on finances. And I don't know if that's always the best decision, even if finances are important to you. There's so many other things you have to consider in making a decision that's going to affect the way your life, essentially turns out. Because the people you go to college with from 18 to 22, I mean, a lot of those people are my closest friends in life now. And those people are pouring into you and they're having a major impact in the decisions that you make as you move forward. And so, like I would hate to think back to my former self that I would have made a decision solely predicated on how much money I could get, right? And so I'm kind of glad that I don't have it, but I do have a 16-year-old son who's in the recruiting process now. And so being able to just like articulate that and be able to have open dialogue with him about what's important to him and like my thought process on it, not trying to tell him what to do. Like it's his life and he has to run his own race. But as a parent, to be able to present all the facts and details that I possibly can so he can make an informed decision.
No, I love that, right? Still valuing the college experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know you weren't always this financially wise. Can you just look back earlier in your career? Did anyone give you some pointers on just how to manage your own money? Is it a teammate or, another former player?
It was a guy by the name of Frank Bisignano from I can't even say the other bank that he worked at, but he was a COO. I did an internship there, and that really was like the catalyst for me to really start taking onus in my own trajectory in terms of the finances. And so I was 25 years old, I believe, and like it was a game changer for me, and it really gave me a greater appreciation for the resources that are available to you if you are an athlete. Like literally, you could reach out to anybody, and for the most part, they'll get back to you if you're just literally trying to learn. I don't need anything from you, but just impart a little bit of knowledge and what made you successful. And I like that approach. I think really helped me build a really, really robust network of people that I could call on and kind of get advice from. So I think athletes don't understand their reach sometimes. I mean, you could use that access to get into the hottest club here in New York City, or you could use that access to be able to get into, one of the greatest firms and access to the greatest minds. So it really just comes down to like what's important to you personally at that time in your life. But you also have to realize that being an athlete is like such a finite amount of time you have that you have this massive platform. And once it's over, you're just a retired guy looking for something and you just don't have the same cachet.
Yeah. Did he leave you any gems that you still think about? I'm sure he gave you a nice...
The biggest thing was when I told him that I didn't really have any interest in being a banker, he said it's not really about being a banker. He said it's about putting yourself in uncomfortable positions because the only way you actually grow is if you stress yourself. And he was like, look, your muscles, you're strong. Like the only reason you're strong is because you've done this squat for 1,000 reps, and that's why you're so explosive and that's why you're so strong. It didn't just happen overnight. It's 10 years of doing it consistently that have gotten you to this point, and you have to take that same approach in everything that you do. And so that really resonated with me.
I love that, man. I love that. And for you, when I think of athletes who made a really smooth transition right into their next life, I really think about you often, and I'm just curious. I really want to hear from you yourself. Was it as smooth as it seems, or was there ever moments of self-doubt there? I feel like a lot of athletes kind of struggle making that transition, but I'm curious your thoughts on if it was smooth sailing all the way. Or
anybody that tells you that anything transitional is smooth is lying to you. Because you got to think, from the age I was 7 years old, this is something that I always dreamed about. Not many people ever think about, I need to prepare myself for when I'm done having a great career, right? That's not something you think about. And quite frankly, you're stepping into a world that you just haven't been really like trained for, right? You look at some of these amazing bankers and hedge fund managers and private equity, like these guys have wanted to do this since they were in high school, and then they went to Wharton Business School, or they went to Chicago Booth, and they had great training grounds at Morgan Stanley before they went to different they're building the reps. Just the same way Malik Neighbors grew up and went to LSU. Like he was trained to do exactly what he's doing, being the dominant athlete, the same way they were. And so you're stepping into an arena where people have a huge advantage on you. Not only expertise, not only domain expertise, but also just thousands and thousands of reps looking at opportunities and being a junior analyst and working their way up to part. Like there's a process to it. And so like if you're not taking that same diligent, hungry, feisty approach to it, like you're never going to be able to compete with them. And so like I just got into it as a rookie. I was humble. I knew I had to start from the very beginning. I had to get a lot of reps. I knew I was going to fall down and scrape my knees, but that wasn't mean I was going to quit. I was going to keep fighting and getting better. And like, so you just kind of have to have that same approach, that you just work tirelessly the same way you did, being a great tennis player that you were, or being a great soccer player that you were, being the great whatever that you were. When you're making that transition, you just have to, you got to know it's going to be ugly at times, and you're going to be filled with a lot of self-doubt, and you're going to be times where you think, should I be doing this, and why am I doing this? This is so stressful, and I'm really struggling with this. And you just have to look yourself in the mirror. Is it important enough for you to push through that adversity?
I love that, relating that to the rookie season, right? Kind of going in a new rookie season, if you will.
Yeah.
As we wind down here, I know you've made a name for yourself in business circles, but when you do get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame one day, where will that stand on your list of accomplishments, both on and off the field?
I would say pretty high, because it's something that you always aspire to do, right? Like winning a championship, being a first round pick, being impactful in your community, like all these things that you aspire to do.
Right.
And the thing that I think is really cool about the Hall of Fame is, like, you really have no say so. I mean, I had a say so, but how I get in, when I get in, like all of that is so subjective. And so I really try not to think about it, honestly, because I have no control over it. It's media members that have evaluated my career, and they determine if I'm worthy or not, right? And so it's
out of your hands.
It's out of my hands. And so for me to spend a lot of time and consideration on it, like it's really, it doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
It makes me a head basket, if anything. I mean, I'm like,
come on, you have to consider it at some times, though, right? Come on.
Actually, I was having this conversation last night over dinner. It kind of gives me a lot of trepidation, because, to think you have 20 minutes to encapsulate everything that happened in your career, and thank the hundreds of people who have poured into your life to make this even an opportunity. The countless times my mom was driving me to practice when she had chemotherapy earlier that day, and still working, cooking dinner, fighting for her life, and still getting me to practice on time. And like all of these sacrifices that these people made, the guidance counselors helping me, make sure I'm getting my grades together, the coaches that, were working too. Coach Frank, my Pee Wee coach, he had 3 jobs, and working at KFC, as a night chef, and like all of these things, like these people, they didn't have to do this for me. They chose to do this, and they didn't even think that I was ever going to make it to the National Football League. They did it as an 8-year-old kid. There's no way that you would assume that this kid is going to turn out to be a good player.
He might make the high school team,
he
right?
might make the high school team. But that's not what it's about. It's about me helping this young man. He's got a dream. Like, how can I pour into him? And so, like, it gives me angst, because I don't want to leave anybody out that played a meaningful part of my life.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
As we wind down here, Larry, I like to ask guests on the show, if you can leave us with a gem over the course of your football career to now, what's just been the best business lesson you would say you've learned?
You can never do enough diligence. And the saying I always say, trust but verify.
Do a little double check in
there,
right?
Got to.
Love that.
Yep.
Well, there you have it, folks. The president at Larry Fitzgerald Enterprises. Larry, thank you for joining the show, man.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.